Hello, Siobhan O'Sullivan. Thank you very much for jumping on to talk to us on the Menopause Research and Education Fund. Greatly appreciated. Now, for those who don't know you, you have written a very, very lovely little book, which actually I don't have with me in the office, unfortunately. I forgot to bring it over, and I was hoping I'd make it home in time before we started. So there you go. Anyway, it's a lovely little book called My Life on Pause. And it's about your journey through being diagnosed with premature ovarian insufficiency. And also, I mean, you're a doctor as well. So in many ways, it's like a double surprise in some ways. It's a lovely book. But let's start with basically, how did you find out and how much of a surprise was it for you?
I mean, it was a big surprise because I hadn't, despite medical training and being a doctor, I'd never actually heard of premature ovarian insufficiency. It wasn't something that was on my radar at all. No, never even heard of it. And I mean, I'd heard of an early menopause. I've got a really early memory of watching This Morning and there being a young teenage girl on saying she'd gone through the menopause. But I was so young, I didn't really understand what that meant. But I'd actually just come out of a 7-year relationship. And because of that, I'd let my prescription of the pill lapse. And during that time, I was on the way to work and started getting these horrific hot flushes. And at first, I think I just thought it was due to coming off the hormonal pill and just my hormones being everywhere. So I hadn't really thought it was anything. But there were just a few times when I was like, this is something else. I was dripping in sweat, having to strip off on the train, and it was the middle of winter. So I thought, well, I might go and get some blood tests. And I went to see my GP and they booked me for some blood tests. And then I think some of the results came back a bit abnormal, but I had a phone call from it sounded like quite a young male GP. And at this point I was doing my GP placement. So it sounded, and you can kind of like, oh, it sounds probably like I'd sound if I wasn't too sure about something. And he said, you've got some abnormal results, but we'll book you in for a test. And I didn't really think too much of it. And then it wasn't till a few months later when I had gone for a smear test and I had a bit more of an experienced female GP who just, when she was doing the smear test, just said, are you aware of your abnormal blood results? And I think I kind of brushed it off a bit. I was like, oh, yeah, no, I'm getting some more blood tests. And she was like, well, no, I've not actually seen FSH levels this high in someone your age. I'm going to refer you to the early menopause clinic and the premature failure clinic, I think. And she did say those words, which at the time was a bit, because I hadn't really.
To the what?
Yeah, I know. I'd gone in for a smear test and come out with these words that I wasn't really sure of. So I think that all kind of hit me quite quickly. And then, no, definitely. And then to be fair, she referred me quite quickly, and I had, I got like an appointment through the post, but I think it was about 8 months down the line that this appointment had come in.
And by I'm guessing you're thinking you don't know whether or not you actually have any ovaries left, or what's going on. So in that long period of wait, what's going through your mind?
Well, at that point, I'd already started Googling. So I'd already started. I know you shouldn't do. It's the worst thing that anybody can do, but I'd already started Googling. And obviously, I mean, I was 31 at this point. And it was a bit of a tricky time because I'd just come out of a 7-year relationship, somebody who I had kind of planned a future with and thought all of that. And then all of a sudden that's taken away from you, and you're trying to rebuild yourself and you're trying to rebuild your life. And then all of this kind of the fertility questions start because you're worried about if you've got any eggs left. And I panicked a bit and I was like, I don't think I've not got time to wait 8 months. What happened? This is a ticking time bomb now. I can't wait 8 months. So I did end up going and seeing somebody privately just because I just wanted to get some answers. And in my head, I was like, I just don't know what's going on. And if I wait 8 months and then I've lost it in 8 months, I'd be so angry and upset. So at that point, I did book to see somebody privately so that I could try and get some answers.
Yeah. And what happened when you sort of got the answers back from that one?
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think I've ever had, and it is quite interesting being on the other side of the coin as a kind of a healthcare professional. I think when you're suddenly the patient, I don't think I've ever had a kinder doctor who is just so calm and so kind and warm. And I went on my own because I mean, I'd had like my friends and my mum and my family had offered to come, but I think in my head I was almost in a very, I think because I'd just recently become single and I was like, this is my thing and I just need to deal with this by myself. So I was in a bit of a weird headspace. So I was like, no, I don't want anyone to come. This is my problem. I'm going to deal with it. So I was on my own, and he was just so kind as he broke the news. And he said, from your blood tests, to be honest, from your blood tests, I've got a diagnosis, but we can order some more things. We can order a scan. We can order to scan the ovaries. We can order you some further blood tests to see if there are any like follicles left, any eggs left. And he was just really kind and really reassuring, which was what I needed, I think, at that time. And it's interesting being on the other side, because I really, really appreciate through everything just that really kind consultation was, that doctor.
Has it changed the way you practice in terms of now? People?
Yeah, so I think I've always tried to. I want to give people time. I think the thing I enjoy most about my job is patient contact, and it's those kind of relationships that you can build, and it is the fact you are in such a privileged position to be with someone at their most vulnerable. So I think, it's really it has made me think about making sure that I am there and I'm trying to listen and deliver things in the best way, because it makes such a difference.
Yeah, it is an interesting one, isn't it? So when he sort of gave you this diagnosis, and basically it wasn't great news, you were also given a book with the lovely title "Making Friends with Menopause." When I read that in the book, I was like, "Whoa, who came up with that title?" What did you do with that book, and how long did it take?
I put that I've got a little box of storage things, and it went straight in there, because I think that was the thing. At the time I got this diagnosis, I had this bad news, and I wasn't really ready to process the fertility stuff, because I wasn't in a place to think about having children. So I think I just kind of boxed it away, and I put this book straight in a box, and I was just like, I'm not making friends with the menopause. I don't have to deal with this. I'm just going to ignore it. And if I ignore it, then it's really silly, but I hadn't looked into it. I didn't understand the bigger impact of things like menopause and POI, and I didn't really think about all of the effects it can have on your health, on your bones. To me, it was just, I think I just boxed it as, okay, I can't have kids, I can't deal with that now, so away you go. And
you did start having a lot of those symptoms, didn't you? Remember the book, you talk about the vaginal symptoms. What other? So basically, what sort of symptoms did you end up developing?
Yeah, so looking back, hindsight's a great thing, isn't it, when you look back? But I definitely, because when I got diagnosed, I'd gone through the menopause, so it had obviously started earlier.
But you had the pill before, hadn't you? So you sort of like, did the pill sort of mask those symptoms?
Yeah, so the pill had kind of covered it up, but I'd been definitely kind of mood swings. Like, I don't want to say irrational, because I hate it when women get coined irrational and emotional, but I think definitely emotional. And I think that had an impact on previous relationships when I was getting maybe accused or not like treated. I think there was no understanding. It was just like, God, she's being emotional. Like, it's just pushed down. And the vaginal dryness was a big one. I do speak quite openly about this, because I think for a young woman going through something like this, you just don't want to be any different to your peers. You don't want to be different. You don't want to feel different. And actually, very intimate issues like that, to have this, that even has an impact on relationships. Like, I remember having trust issues with partners because they thought that, I wasn't attracted to them anymore. There was like, sex was uncomfortable. I didn't want to have sex necessarily because it was painful. You just feel, and you don't understand what's going on either. So you kind of start turning on yourself a bit, and you're a bit confused. And it might seem like not a big thing, but actually I think that the intimacy side of things is a really horrible thing to go through.
Yeah, it is. And even when you get to my ripe old age.
Well, any age. It's important at any age, isn't it?
Yeah, it was my biggest symptom, I think, in the end. And it didn't really start till 3 or 4 years after menopause. But I can see how relationships break up because of it, because it is incredibly difficult. And you do internalize yourself. And it took me 2 years to actually discuss it. To be able to say, it's not you, it is actually, because I literally tore myself apart going, my God, what's wrong with me? Tits have gone south. I can't even have sex. It's just, everything's falling apart. There's no use. I have no use or no purpose.
Yeah.
It's not that I think that I'm defining myself ability to have sex, but you just go,
Yeah.
I can't even do that.
Yeah. It's horrible.
Yeah, and I don't
And
think people realize how much it impacts.
Exactly, and no one talks about it because it's still, however much you break away, sex is still a taboo. Like, it doesn't matter that it's almost one of the most natural things in the world that everyone is kind of, most people are doing, but it's such a taboo subject, so no one talks about it, and no one wants to talk about vaginal dryness or the fact that they feel like they're getting I was getting recurrent thrush, and I kept going back to the GP, and they kept giving me STI tests, and it just makes you feel dirty, and you keep doing them even though you don't think that's it, but you're confused, and everyone's kind of throwing things at you, but no one's looking in the right place, and it just I think it really damages your relationship with your body, and I don't think sometimes you realize that until you're a little bit through the other side.
Yeah,
but it takes a lot of work to
about it too. Is it sort of like, I did anatomy and physiology at university. Yeah. Nobody mentioned this. I spent 20 years in medical publications, and nobody's mentioned this. Yeah. It came as an enormous surprise to me that my clitoris was shrinking.
Yeah, and exactly.
Why doesn't somebody tell you?
Yeah, exactly.
Because, as we know, vaginal estrogen can make an enormous amount of difference to these things.
Yes, exactly. And there are things out there. And to be fair, I've had some pessaries for it, and they're not working as well. They're doing a little bit maybe internally, but it's more the external. And but then another issue is trying to then get hold of somebody to get yourself some like re-prescribed and get things re-prescribed. So there are things out there, I think, that can help, but I'm still struggling to find them. And
I have just actually done literally an hour ago, another interview with Siohbhan O'Sullivan, who is a gynecologist, and talking about these things actually. And she had a beautiful little vulva, just what do you call it, model up there, and we discussed exactly where you put that estrogen cream, and you put it.
Brilliant.
Yeah, so get yourself an E-string and the cream for the side. You'll be
perfect.
That's my pro tip for the day. Anyway, so moving on from those symptoms, but apart from tearing yourself apart from that, you also went through a period in the book where basically it looked to me like you were just torturing yourself on a daily basis, trying to work out the cause. What were you thinking, and how did you get through that?
Well, that was, there was things like memory issues can be a real kind of bugbear, and you start to think you're forgetting things, you start to worry about what the cause of that is, you start to put weight on, feel maybe a little bit dizzy. There's lots of symptoms with menopause, and you start convincing yourself that something's going on. I remember the heartburn. I got really bad heartburn and couldn't really understand why, and I think at the time I was studying like the gastrointestinal system, and I convinced myself that I'd got like esophageal cancer, or I couldn't, and it sounds ridiculous, but there's all these symptoms going on, and then you're like, oh, I'm dizzy, and then you convince yourself you've got this, and nothing really makes sense, but you know that your body's not right, and then you're just looking for answers, and you're looking obviously in completely the wrong places, but you've not got anybody to kind of put you back on track, and you just really tear yourself up trying to figure out what's going on. And you don't know that something's wrong, but you know something's wrong, I think.
Yeah, and it almost sounded like you were looking for something internally to blame in a way. Yeah, it's something I did, and that must be really
really. And you do, and I think that's when you get the diagnosis, you assume it must be you. It's like, well, was I on the pill for too long? Was it? And then because I think when I got the diagnosis, they did all of the word finding it's all gone, but the live symptoms, here we go, all of the like autoimmune screen and the genetic testing, and they didn't find anything, so they said it was idiopathic, which means there's unknown cause. And then then you turn on yourself, because you're like, well, God, was it? Because they're like, well, it could have been stress, and you're like, well, have I been stressed? It's like, or pollution, and you're like, should I not have moved to London? Have I done this to myself? Like, was it being on the pill for 10 years? Like, is it something I've done? And you just, because you can't figure out that this has just happened for no reason.
Yeah, it's a very difficult one, isn't it? Very, very tricky. The other thing that you mentioned in the book was like you'd never really thought that much about having children previously, but then how did that change when you told, well, you can't now? What went through your head?
Well, it was I think it's it's still to this day a little bit of a enigma to me because I was 31. I'd just come out of this 7-year relationship, so I was not in a place to think about having children. I think then I was just more bothered about finding somebody, or whether I ever find somebody again. And children was always something that maybe I thought I might have, but it was never my main drive. Like I've got friends who have known from 18 that they want kids by 25, or they want kids by 30, and they really want that. Whereas I was always a bit like, well, just, see what happens if I find someone. And then you find out you can't have children, and you start thinking, do I want children? Is that something that's taken away? But then you're not in a position necessarily to. I've not really been in a position to have to kind of have children again since. And I think I've probably then tried to focus more on having a life without children and trying to fulfill that side of things. And then you're not sure if you are kind of convincing yourself for like a self-protective thing. Like, are you telling yourself you're okay because you don't? It's hard to kind of pinpoint what you're feeling and why you're feeling it, really.
Yeah, exactly. And these are very pointed and
no.
you sort of described at the beginning of the book that you're on a journey, and before we get to where you are at the moment, but in terms of accepting or looking at other options for having children, where do you think this will be a movable feast over time? I guess?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's still they did, when they did the scan, they said your womb's fine, your uterus is fine, you could carry a child, and they did mention, I think, because they put me in touch with a fertility counsellor, which again took a while to actually happen. So by the time I'd started speaking to her, I think I'd already processed things a bit myself, which probably not in a healthy way. But when I started speaking to her, her focus was very much on the fertility side, and they weren't really my issues at the start. I think my issues at the start were more like, I'm a bit broken. Is anyone ever going to love me again? How am I going to meet somebody when I can't give them the full package? Like, it's hard enough dating people in this world anyway, but then, well, they're not going to go for me if they could get somebody who could give them everything. Like, I'm not that special. Why would anybody kind of, and you just start going in on yourself and like, oh God, well, that's it, isn't it? I'm on my own. Children isn't an option. And I think they threw a lot of ideas at me, like, oh, what about egg donation? You still got adoption. But again, when those things are being thrown, it's hard to hear them when you're on your own and you're not really in that place. And I think it will be a very different journey if I was maybe in a relationship and had somebody to bounce those ideas off, or if we have more of a shared dream. But you're kind of trying to figure out what you want. And then I think still it's a whole different journey to go down that, and it's hard because you're trying to protect yourself. And I think the thought of going down some of those routes now, even to this day, scares me a little bit, because it's you do so much work trying to get yourself to a good position and trying to get yourself comfortable with life and accepting things. And part of me does feel if you open up a new journey of fertility struggles, are you opening yourself up to a lot of hurt and pain and difficulty that actually you maybe don't need? It's hard because I suppose if I get to a point where I'm in a loving relationship with somebody and they really want children, and I think that's something we want to do, maybe it's something that I'll come back to, but I've not been in that position up to now.
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. And speaking of, how do you handle, because obviously it's a difficult thing to, when you first sort of meet someone and say, hi, I'm Siobhan, I can't have kids. So how are you handling this?
Well, I think so. Yeah, that was definitely. That's probably sounds quite shallow, but that was definitely my main issue at the start, because I had just broken up with somebody and I was just suddenly like, oh God, I'm never going to find anybody ever again. And now I'm broken and I'm like not the complete package. No one's going to want me. So that was my main worry earlier on in the diagnosis. And I think that's changed a bit. I think initially, because everyone kind of puts in all the, oh, don't worry, the right person they'll look past that, don't worry. And you're just like, well, it's easy to say that, isn't it, when you don't have this? And it's easy to say the right person, but it is hard enough dating and finding the right person. And I just don't want to give anyone any more reason to kind of, as you said, like swipe left, swipe right, whatever it is. And initially I think I didn't say very much about it, but then you almost feel like you're lying, and I'm not. It almost feels like you're keeping this dark secret, and then it's picking the time to tell somebody when, and then you don't want them to think you've hidden it for so long for any reason.
You're stuck between a rock and a hard place, really.
Yeah,
isn't it?
but equally, it's not something. Yeah, like you said, you don't want to just bombard them with "My name's Siobhan and I possibly can't have children." Don't. What do you want to do? So now I've to be fair, I've actually had some quite positive experiences with people when I've brought it up. They've been a lot more maybe open to it than I thought. And now I just tend to be honest, it normally now comes up in like first or second date, and I don't intend to put it out there, but it's just if the conversation goes there, I'll maybe kind of just be like, well, actually, I'm not sure about children, but it is a little bit more complicated, and then kind of go with it like that.
Yeah. God, what a thing to juggle.
Yeah,
exactly. And you mentioned the swipers there. Now, this is an interesting part of your book, because it's sort of that that sort of dichotomy of when you think the guys literally basically you were saying that basically what they do is they get their phone, they're going through. Oh, she looks like she wants kids, and swiping them off just because they at this stage of their life don't. When you see them doing that, well, what's your my first reaction would probably be to smack them very hard across the face with their own phone.
Yeah.
How have you handled this?
Yeah. Well, so that was, I think, some good friends that I was like with, and they were like, oh God, 34, they're probably going to want kids. I'd just swipe kind of left, and you're like, okay, but you don't. And my initial thing was like, but you don't know if they can have kids, and you don't know. And that's why this whole dating app thing is so superficial, isn't it? Because you have to it wants you to put on there, do you want kids? Do you not want kids? And it's like just so blasé, and it doesn't give you an option to be like, well, I'm not sure. And then if you put unsure, people assume that you're, well, again, it's just this societal thing of like, well, why is she not sure? What's wrong with her, kind of thing. And
I just over time. I mean, I was very much like you, where I didn't really put a huge amount of priority on having children, and then it was
it changes with exactly. I think it is hard with the dating, and again, you don't want to put it all. You don't owe anybody anything, so you shouldn't have to put your whole self out there straight away. But then it is hard because you don't want to put a false version of yourself out there as well. So it's hard, but I think it takes a while, and it's taken me what, like, I'm 36 now, so it's taken me probably about 5 years to even get onto a kind of I'm okay with how I'm handling this. It's a roller coaster. I think you get good days and you get bad days as well.
Yeah, I can imagine. And speaking of having good and bad days, you also mentioned in the book, I mean, because you are quite young, that if you have a hot flush or something like that, people will say, I can see myself saying this myself, very easy. Oh, going through the menopause, are you? Or something. There's these sort of unthinking comments that sort of say. How do you handle those?
I think now I'm a bit more like, actually, well, yes, actually. And it's because it can be quite funny. We had I was in clinic a couple of days ago, and it was a pediatric clinic. So I was working with some children, and one of the dads was like, oh God, you must be a mum, like you're so good with children, kind of thing. And I didn't, because I thought it would be unprofessional and inappropriate, but I did. If I was in a non-professional situation, I probably would have said, 'cause like if you're in the taxi and someone says like, oh, how many kids have you got? Have you got kids? Sometimes, depending on what mood I'm in, sometimes I will just be like, well, actually, I can't have children, because I just think it's just one of those questions that just gets thrown so easily. But I was in clinic and I did have to bite my tongue, because I was like, this is probably, I shouldn't be making don't want to make the patient feel uncomfortable. But it was just that assumption of, oh, you're a mum, like you're so good with kids, you must have children. And you're like, you say it so casually and freely, like it's the easiest thing in the world and that everybody's going to have access to it. But if I wasn't in such a good place that day, that possibly could have maybe tipped me over the edge, or like, so it's hard, and it depends on how I'm feeling, I think, and if I'm how strong I'm feeling. But sometimes I do push back a bit, just because I think you have to, just sometimes making people feel a bit uncomfortable just makes them think.
Yeah, it's such a difficult one, isn't it? Very, very, because I can see myself saying it to somebody.
Nobody does it out of malice. There's no malintent there. There's no no one's doing it because they're trying to hurt anybody. But then that's the problem, isn't it? Like, because it's just so casual, it is everyone, it's just easy, and then it's the other people who are kind of having to just suck it up. But it's
yeah, very, very difficult. And speaking of being too young and things like that, you've started a petition. And so what is the aim of the petition, and where do people find it?
Yeah, so I think the main thing is it's the hashtag Not Too Young campaign, and it's on change.org, and it kind of started from an earlier petition that I tried to do with the government, and it was just to raise an awareness and get a public awareness campaign. But it could be quite hard, I think, to get those off the ground. So the change.org is just a bit more broad, but it is, the main issue is to just raise awareness, because I think the biggest thing that everybody says is that nobody knows anything about it. Like, your friends don't know anything about it, your family don't know anything about it. And I think there's lots of things we could do to try and improve people's lives, and there's so many different areas we can tackle, but my initial one is just to get the message out there that this is something that can happen and affect people, just so that
a lot of people too. I mean, early menopause
is
what, 1 in 10, and I think it was 1 in 100 for below the age of 40 or something. So it's actually quite a lot of people.
Well, they're also, I think they've even said that, because that was like the 1% statistic, and now they're even saying it might be as close to like 4%. So that's like what, in 40, which is, and the thing is, it's still something that people don't talk about. They're ashamed about, they are embarrassed that they can't have children. Like, there's so many different facets to it, like where you're from, are your family supportive, are they not supportive, like are your friends supportive, will your culture accept it? Like, there's so much going on in the background as to why women might feel that they can't look, they won't look for it, or they can't speak about it. So I think I think I felt so alone and so isolated for such a long time that I just don't want anybody to feel that again.
Yeah, it is. I can imagine. The other thing too, I guess, and a lot of people who had this at a very young age as well have said, when they get to sort of your age and all of their friends are getting married and they're all having kids, and while they're really, really happy for their friends and the babies and those kinds of things, but you just you sort of feel like, why me?
Yeah, I think I got a little bit emotional at a wedding a few weekends ago, and it was actually my best friend that pulled me aside and was like, I think it's possible.
Oh, I've lost you. Oh, where'd you go? And you come back. Oh, there you are. You're back.
I'm back. Sorry, I'm not what happened.
That's all right.
Back.
Yes. Oh, you've gone to black, but you're. Yep, there you are. Yeah. So you said you were at a wedding, yeah?
Yeah, and I think it was one of my best friends who pulled me aside, and she was like, I think it might be because, there's a few new babies in the group. There's a few things going on. We've got quite a lot of weddings this year. And she was like, I think it's probably just all of those things going on. And we were away a couple of weeks ago, and we were having a conversation at dinner about a holiday we're all going on next year. And there was talk of whether the babies were going to come. And it was, I was just like, in the nicest possible way, I think if the babies are going to come next year, I'll probably give that one a miss. And it wasn't until I looked at everybody's faces, and everyone's face was like, oh God, I know that I sound like this horrific woman who hates children. I didn't mean it like that. But I think from that sense, like, because I'm trying to build, at the moment, I'm building myself, I'm trying to have a fulfilled life without children. So to me, things like trips away with my friends are an advantage that I can do. So I'm trying to do all of the perks almost that I can do. But yeah, I think it can be hard sometimes because you don't want to be anti-kids. And I love children, and I honestly, I might even one day have them. You never know. But it is hard navigating that, because I think when people aren't going through it, they can't really understand why you might feel that way. And sometimes you come across a bit like this ogre when you don't mean to. It's just you need to put protective measures in for yourself, don't you?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you're not an ogre. You've mentioned a couple of times we've been talking here that you say it in the book that you've a few years later you're still saying you feel like you're broken, but you're not broken. So how far from that point from that point of in the beginning feeling that you're broken, and now obviously because you've said it a few times again tonight, you haven't come to the point where you're not thinking that you're not broken. How far away are from you do you think?
I think
you're not broken?
Yeah, I think I am a lot further on. I don't feel completely broken now. I think now I really do value all of the, like, there's so many parts of your body and there's so much that works, and I'm so pleased for that, and I'm so lucky to have all of those things. So I really try and place an emphasis on, like, I can still do all the things I want to do. I can, and be grateful for that. I think it also helps when you talk about it a bit more, and when you meet people who are more accepting of it, be that like romantic partners, family. It's just, I think my family have been so supportive and my friends have been so supportive, and that has helped a lot. And I'm moving a lot more towards the not feeling, and it's meeting other people as well, meeting other people who've gone through it. So there's definitely, I'm moving a lot more down that road. But I think you do sometimes just get days where you're just a bit like, it would be nice. It would be nice if things like the vaginal dryness were fine, and it would be nice if I didn't have to worry about my bones and my heart at the age of 36. Then, you know, like there's so many things that can affect your body, and people face challenges every day. So you're not on your own, and you just need to make the best of it, I think, sometimes.
Yeah, and it is the nice thing, I guess, is it is a sort of a rapidly evolving landscape with the whole sort of menopause thing. Now you can really see it. Nearly every day, I think, on social media, I see another POI type support service or something popping up. I don't know who they are, whatever, but there do seem to be a lot more people talking about it, and a lot more people offering support. So I guess it's a matter of, finding your clan, really.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that it does help. It's again that just not feeling alone. And I think if you don't feel so alone in something, then you can explore it a bit more confidently, and you can get to somewhere a bit quicker, and get to kind of a place where you're a bit happier sooner.
Yes. Well, I hope you're happy.
Yes.
If people want to, so you've got the change.org petition, the name of which has gone straight out of my head. You're not too young for menopause.
Hashtag too young. Change.org. Yeah.
And the book, if people want to find the book, where do they find it?
I've got it there. Oh gosh, I can't do the it's on Amazon. It's on Amazon at the it's also on the Olympia website. You can just type it into Google and it comes up. And we started with a couple of the other girls that I met through the Daisy Network. The Daisy Network is a charity for POI. And I've met a couple, 3 amazing women through that. And we've started a podcast recently called the Premature Menocast. And it's just a place where 4 of us, because we all come from quite different kind of places. We all had diagnosis at different ages. We're all on different kind of fertility journeys. So it's quite a nice place to kind of discuss things, because it's got people from different ages coming at it from a different perspective. So we've started that as well. So if you want to give that a listen, if anyone is struggling and feels like they need a little bit more information, then it's on Apple and Spotify as well.
Oh, brilliant. And if people want to contact you, how do they find you?
So my Instagram is at my life on pause POI. They can contact us through there, and be happy to answer any questions.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you. Lovely.
And I know people will probably think, oh my God, this is going to be really, actually I'm very impressed that I didn't cry through this. I was thinking, she's going to make me cry. But the book is actually, it's very, it's very short, which is nice.
Yeah.
But it's very factual. But it's also very touching. And I don't know, I just think you've done a really nice job of sort of balancing what you sort of needed to get across and what you were going through in a really, really difficult moment. So I wish you the best of luck for your journey.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Brilliant. All right, I will let you go. Thank you for joining us, and hopefully we will speak again in the future. And I've got a lot of people that I can throw at you for your podcast. Great.
Brilliant.
Yeah. All right. I'll speak to you later.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you.